I told myself I was going to get up early today, but I hit snooze 3 times. I know I can, but I don't. I told myself I would go to bed on time today, but here I am doom scrolling Instagram at 1 in the morning. I know I can, but I don't. And I told myself today would finally be the day that I go to the gym, but that's what I told myself yesterday too. I know I can, but I don't. Now, if there's a single thing that I can credit the complete overhaul of my entire life to, from working in a corporate 9-to-5 job in the financial industry to speaking at events, traveling the world, and making money what feels like for me on demand, I would credit it to my ability to understand how to make consistency automatic. How to make consistency a byproduct of who I am instead of something that is difficult for me to accomplish. Now, before doing this, I always knew that I wanted to do big things. I always knew that I had big goals, and I knew that I was capable of achieving them, but I never could get myself to do the things that I knew I needed to do to achieve them in the first place. And now, once I understood how I could be consistent and how consistency is created inside of the brain, I was able to reverse engineer it so that those things I needed to do came easily to me instead of feeling difficult. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you guys the exact mechanism I used to do that. What essentially allowed me to put me and my brain on the same team towards a common goal instead of pitting us one against another at every single turn. Now, what I'm going to explain is going to be a 3-step process that has been able to breed this level of consistency for me. And the third step is the one that I want you to pay the most attention to because it works directly with your dopamine, which, as we know, is the thing that keeps us doing things that we should not be doing. But before we get into that, I want to set the stage with one very clean statement that I want you guys to write down. If you guys are going to take anything away from this video, I want it to be this. So pause the video, go and get a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper or your journal or whatever you like to write in, something that you can actually, look back at, or maybe just type it on your computer. Consistency is just a set of neural pathways. If we want to change our life, we have to stop waiting for the right feeling and start breaking the habit of being our old self. The reason this rings true is because our brain is nothing but plastic, and that plastic can be shaped and molded in the way that we choose. And you don't need to take my word for it, because who am I? You can take the word of a leading neuroscientist named Dr. Michael Merzenich, who says himself that from the day that we are born to the day that we die, our brain consciously revises and remodels, improving or slowly declining as a function of how we use it. Write that down, remember all of it, and it will serve you. Aside from that, let's get down to business. When we want to be consistent in areas that feel difficult for us, and we don't take the actions we know we can and that we want to, what is actually happening inside of our brains? Now, these behaviors are what I like to refer to as brute forcing habits or brute forcing discipline. When we try to do something that feels extremely difficult, we are relying entirely on our prefrontal cortex to complete the action. The prefrontal cortex is essentially the thinking part of your brain that lies at the front here. It is the area that is responsible for willpower, executive function, and all of the forced choices that we make on a day-to-day basis. Using it requires the most amount of energy from us. Now, there's another area inside of our brain that is called the medial prefrontal cortex, and that area specifically is responsible for our self-concept and our identity. And inside of the medial prefrontal cortex, there is a neural network called the default mode network. What this network does and what this system does is act as a cognitive filter. If the identity that we have internally is, I am a night owl who doesn't like mornings or waking up early, then our brain will view the behavior of attempting to wake up early in the morning as an existential threat to its internal identity. It is completely out of alignment with who we believe we are. And as a result of that, it will actively trigger resistance, such as spiking our cortisol and overall making us anxious, to force us back into alignment with the identity and the beliefs that we inherently have, or at least believe that we have. That is why, if we have such a habituated pattern of going to bed late and waking up late, any attempt to go to bed early and wake up early feels extremely difficult. Becoming this consistent person that you know you are capable of and desire to be so badly truly comes down to making that level of consistency that you want a byproduct of your identity. And in order to do so, we need to apply the 3 steps that I mentioned before. So, step number 1, establish an anchored identity. Before we go and set 3 alarms at 5 o'clock, 5:05, and 5:10 because we want to wake up early, we need to change the internal story that we tell ourselves about who we are, because our brain absolutely hates cognitive dissonance, which is essentially acting out of alignment with our internal belief systems. It's the gap between our actions and who we think we are. We need to immediately go from telling ourselves that waking up early is a difficult thing to accomplish, to telling ourselves that I am simply the kind of person who values waking up early. I am simply an early bird. Early bird gets the worm. And now what we're doing there is simply giving the medial prefrontal cortex, remember that part of our brain that is automating our identity, we are giving it evidence that would support the action that we want to take consciously. Think about it this way. There are usually two types of people who are trying to quit smoking. The first type of person gets offered a cigarette from someone and tells that person who offered it to them, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit." Now notice and remember that that person used the word trying. And now the second type of person gets offered the same cigarette from the same person and tells the person who offered it to them, "No thanks, I don't smoke." Do you notice the massive psychological difference between someone still identifying as a smoker and the other person no longer identifying as a smoker? Who do you think is going to have the easier time genuinely making a change and rejecting that cigarette long term? Obviously, person B, which leads me into step number 2. Reduce the distance between point A and point B. Inside of our brain, we have something called the basal ganglia. This is the automated response mechanism for all of our actions. When we want to make consistency a byproduct of our identity, our basal ganglia is going to be the one making decisions that are going to be in line with that consistent identity now. And the truth is, our basal ganglia doesn't care about the scale of the action that we desire to take. It also doesn't care about the massive amount of transformation that we want to make. All it cares about is the repetition of the loop that we want to accomplish, the repetition of the bad habit that we want to replace with a good habit. If we go straight from waking up at 9 a.m. to waking up at 5 a.m., our brains are going to have a really difficult time dealing with that drastic shift. And as a result, the massive disruption is going to be logged as a threat and send signals of fatigue and frustration and anxiety to our body. You've probably felt this before when you try to make a huge impactful shift in your life and go from 0 to 100. So instead of giving yourself this large goal in which there's a huge gap between where you are now and where you want to be, just set yourself a way more realistic initial boundary. Instead of waking up at 9 a.m., just wake up at 8:30 a.m. Or simply commit to getting out of bed the exact second that your alarm would go off instead of hitting snooze 3 times. What we are doing and what we want to do in this specific scenario is train the action of getting up, not train the action of getting up at a very specific time, because we're just simply not there yet. I guess in layman's terms, take some baby steps. Now, a good example of this is actually how it works in the opposite. Think about how we end up accidentally binging an entire season of a show on Netflix or scrolling TikTok for 2 hours when we really only meant to check TikTok for 5 minutes or watch 1 episode of a show. Now, we didn't sit down in those moments and consciously choose to waste 2 to 4 hours of our life. But what happened was that Netflix and TikTok, the algorithms that they've created, have reduced and lowered the friction between our experience and our dopamine hit to absolutely 0. When an episode ends, there's a little 5-second countdown that appears, and after that, the next episode starts automatically. When we scroll TikTok, the next TikTok is immediately available to us. So when we apply the micro step to waking up early, half an hour before, for example, instead of at 9 at 8:30, we are just reverse engineering the same principle of reduced friction. Now the third and final step. Step 3, hack the dopamine loop and reward yourself. Now, dopamine is the neurochemical cement that is locking your bad habits into the basal ganglia, the part of your brain that is automating your behavior, your reactions, and your responses. It's why you feel like you just cannot do the things that you know that you need to do or that you want to do. Now, most people wait until they see massive results to feel good about the changes that they're making and feel good about their progress. Remember the example that I just gave. They go from trying to wake up at 9 a.m. to trying to wake up at 5 a.m. And when they fail, they have this super negative dialogue with themselves and tell themselves that they're just really inconsistent and that they're not capable of the change that they want to make. But when they do that, they're actually doing the reverse of what their brain is desiring and what your brain needs in order to actually change. You need to release dopamine the moment you execute the new identity and the new habit that you're trying to build, because the dopamine is the evidence. The dopamine is what your brain wants. When you wake up 10 to 15 minutes earlier, the second your feet hit the floor, the second you have your eyes open and you sit up, and the second you've made that conscious choice to stay awake, Mentally celebrate. Tell yourself, this is exactly who I am. I am the kind of person who takes this action. This is what I do. This is what an early riser does. And then go even a step further than that and get out a cue card and write it down. Write down on this cue card, I am an early riser. This is what I do. I wake up early. I feel great. I don't feel tired. Writing things down is generationally more effective than anything else you can possibly think of doing in order to reward your brain for taking the action that you wanted to take. Now, when you do these things, they create a reward prediction error inside of your brain, releasing the splash of dopamine that I just mentioned. The chemical tag tells your brain, hey, what we just did was highly valuable. Record this sequence that we've just done and make it easier to do next time because I want more of this pleasurable feeling. I want more of this dopamine. That's why TikTok has you buy a stranglehold, because every single time you scroll to a next video you find funny, your brain rewards itself for doing so. The scroll, the Netflix binge, it's all for the sake of creating and consuming dopamine hits inside of our brain. It's the sole reason why people get hopelessly addicted to these things. Or even when, video games, when we do something minor, like beat one level in Candy Crush, or that's a really old game, but you understand what I mean. Something like that, we get instantly hit with the reward mechanisms. Right? Same thing why casinos are so fucking addictive. A golden light will flash around, or in a video game, a golden light will flash around our character. We get celebratory music and we get level up, or we get, a huge max win tied all over the screen. The developers and the people behind all of these things don't make us play or experience the things for weeks before showing us some symbol of progress or giving us something that we want. They know exactly what they're doing. They reward us the exact millisecond we complete the action that they want us to take. And that action triggers a flood of dopamine inside of our brain, which tells us this feeling is awesome. Let's keep doing this thing. Let's keep playing, or keep watching, or keep spinning if it was like a slot machine. Now, executing on all three of these things and all three of these steps together that I've just explained will allow you to create an identity where the consistency that you want so bad is simply a byproduct of who you are. And it's not something that you need to brute force discipline in order to accomplish. What you're doing when you take these steps is rewiring the neural pathways inside of your brain to release dopamine when you do the things that you know you need to do and that you know you need to do in order to achieve the things you want, instead of the things you know are holding you back. Getting up early will become easy. It will become, I know I can, and I did. Going to bed on time will become easy. It will become, I know I can, and I did. Going to the gym will become easy. It will become, I know I can, and I did. You have every skill required to become the consistent person that you want to become, and you are more than capable of great things. You can build the dream life you want. You know you can, now you will. And if you want some help executing on the things I talked about inside of this video and making consistency as we've described it, and overall the good habits that you want, the byproduct of who you are, not something that feels so difficult to do, just like I have and these clients have before you, the ones that I've worked with. There's a link down below to speak with me, and it would be my absolute pleasure to see how I would be capable of helping you achieve the same consistency that has changed my own life. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and if you want to see more short form similar to what I've talked about today, make sure to go follow my Instagram, which I'll pop up on the screen right here, or in some area. And I will catch you guys in next week's video. Take it easy.